let's move on. So these are the use cases. 3 use cases for me, nothing much. Number 1, Jira is introduced as a issue tracking tool, right? It's pretty straightforward. When Jira was introduced, it is introduced as an issue tracking software. Issue in Jira is anything that you track. So generally, when we call issue, it's a problem that has occurred in your project or product development, right? But for Jira, anything that we create in Jira is an issue, right? So that's why we say issue types. So you can, if you want to structure your work, what you have to do is to think of different types of issues that you have to work on and then create them in Jira, so that you have a logical arrangement in terms of the type of work you do. As I said earlier, for HR, you can have an issue type called candidates. For marketing, you can have issue types called marketing tasks. For development, you can have tasks, stories, DevOps, deployments, right? Releases. For example, I guide teams to create release boards, Jira boards, where they can keep track of their weekly or daily or monthly releases, right? So every time you want to do a release, production deployment, you create a ticket, issue type called release, and then keep track of it. Then you can see, okay, is it release ready? Is the deployment started? Is it in progress? Is it blocked? Is it on hold? All these statuses can be tracked. Correct? It's a lot more you can do. I mean, you'll be surprised to see how useful it could be in order for you to be agile, right? But it's often been seen as a tool that actually distracts your agile goals. It's not the case. So that's why I'm actually trying to disrupt this mindset and tell the organizations and teams and also professionals, hey, this is not right thinking about Jira. So I'm not a big fan of saying, hey, Jira is a silver bullet. No, right? Jira will not solve any issue alone. But Jira can be a good tool for you to achieve your other goals. If you want to achieve some agile goals, this is great, right? So this is simply an issue tracking software. So if you are a project manager, your daily job is to keep track of the issues, keep track of the priorities, keep track of the things that are happening and monitor them and ensure that they are on track. So this is primarily used for that. So when you're using issue tracking, one use case you have to get clearly achieved is creating transparency. If you have heard this particular term, the term is information radiation. That is the only way you can create the transparency in Agile. Reporting is quite opposite, right? So reporting comes from the approach called anticipation. Now, in traditional project management, what we do is this, right? So you look at the requirement, you get the requirement spec written, finalized, sealed. So if it's a 1-year project, you try to document all the functional and non-functional requirements, seal the requirements with the approval of the stakeholders. Stakeholders will sign off and say, hey, proceed. We are good with this requirement spec. So in that, we anticipate the entire project delivery, right? Whether it's 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, it doesn't matter, right? What you're doing is anticipating. So in that anticipation, there are a lot of reports involved. There are a lot of documents involved, right? We start that with the requirement spec, with the feasibility study, all that. So in Agile, we go in the opposite direction, right? We say, hey, no, we are not going to anticipate a lot. There will be some level of anticipation, but our focus is on transparency, right? Instead of anticipation, we make it adaptive. So we don't anticipate for the year. We do something try to be adaptive so that we can adjust our plan. We adapt our plan based on the changes that happens around us. So if the project is met with a blocker, we are going to discuss and then find a way to navigate from that point. So it's adaptation then anticipation. The process of adaptation, transparency comes as the first pillar. Without transparency, you cannot be adaptive. Without transparency, you are not going to achieve adaptation. Adaptation is simply inspecting what is going on and adapting to the current context. That is basically adaptation, right? So you look at what is happening, inspect that, find out the problems, come up with the solutions, implement them. Given situation, whether it's a crisis or a complementary situation, a greater situation, you're going to adjust yourself, right? Look at what happened to the organization when COVID hit. A lot of organizations failed, struggled, but some organizations were really smart, right? Because the moment it hit the crisis was hit them, what they did was they gathered, adjusted their plan. So how did they do? Looked at what are the potential the benefits or ways to move forward, came up with the strategies and practices to go through that situation. So I know some of the companies did really well as the first wave hit. What they did was they deferred everything that they were doing. They prioritized the requirements and product features that are more crucial for this time, right? Due to the crisis, because a lot of, even if you look at a clinic, right, no one were able to visit the physical clinic, so they had to do everything virtually. So they implemented some of the features that can facilitate the users in a virtual context. This is impossible without right level of transparency. That is the very first use case that I'm basically talking about here, creating transparency. So your aim is that, and you use information radiators. Information radiator is a visual indicator to indicate the progress being made by the team on the current priority. Example, if you are working on a product, you can create various information radiators to give the right visibility. So the term reports is replaced by the information radiators. That's where the dashboards come into play, right? That's where all the other visual indicators come into play. No one goes and tells anyone, hey, here is the information radiator, go through it, come back to me. No. So it's available for anyone who wants to know about the product or the project or the progress. So it's visible in the team setting, team area, so that even the managers can see it, the developers can see it, stakeholders can see it. If the client visit, they can also see it. Correct? So people will absorb the information as per their need. So the manager will look at their perspective. They are going to look at, okay, how can this be useful for me? What do I need to learn from here, right? Developers will go more granular and try to understand the same information. So this is the beauty of information radiation, achieved through information radiators. And product backlog is another information radiator. What it does is it makes it available for everyone. In the previous context, was it possible, right? You sign the requirement spec. Sometimes the project team does not know what it is. When someone wants to find it out, even the project manager struggle to find it from where it is stored. So now it's not the case. So we use these tools, example Jira, to facilitate that. That's why you have a Kanban board. That's why you have a Scrum board. That's why you create burn down charts. That's why you create JQLs and populate them into different queries. Yes.
So basically, you don't create an information radiator. It's a culture. That, because end of the day, when you say, when you use this word called a report or a dashboard, the expectation or the norm is somebody should feed in the information to someone who are anticipating. But when you talk of information radiator, there is an existing piece of information for users to grasp what they want from that. They or to conclude, or derive at some conclusion based on what is available. But who creates that, and is there any trigger when you say this is right? Hope I made my question clear.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a great question as well, Ravi. Thanks for asking that. Yes, information radiators are meant to be automatic in most of the cases. Example, burn down, right? If we are using Jira, it is automated. If we are not using Jira, if we are using a manual, whiteboard burn down, then
Yeah.
you have to draw it, right? So every day you go and update that. In Jira, burn down is an automatically updated one. However, there are information radiators, something like product backlog, that you have to update daily basis, right?
Okay.
If you are a product owner, one of your key primary jobs is to go, ensure that the product backlog is in the right order.
Yeah.
The top stories in the product backlog are grown, etc. Right? So it's not always automatically updated, but there are certain artifacts, there are certain
Yeah.
information radiators that are being automatically updated, and that is part of our strategy also, Ravi, because
Yeah.
that reduces the effort we need to put into creating reports, right? Think of a
Yes.
monthly report that you do, right? Like the report that you're talking about, like a program manager would send.
Yeah.
uh, they spend the day, right? They spend the day to create that report, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of effort, lot of energy.
Yeah.
So this is what we are trying to optimize here, right? So this also branch out to the lean mindset, where we are we the processes are important, but we need to ensure that we have the most optimal processes adapted in our team setting. Does that make
So
sense?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So what you're mentioning now is an ideal situation where everything is running smooth. So,
Yeah. Okay.
ideally, everyone knows the rules of the book. Everybody knows everything, and then that's when you're, kickstarting saying that there will be this information radiators. It's available. Either it is automatic or it's done manual. Ideally.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Correct. If it's not happening, I would push. I would strategize myself to get the support from stakeholders, ensure that they go through it. That is when you need to send weekly notifications, daily notifications, reminding them, all that, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, as you start adapting these things, it's not going to be the ideal context, ideal situation. So
Yeah.
you need to come up with your strategy to onboard your stakeholders. But at the end of the day, everyone needs to come to that common ground for these tools to work. Otherwise,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever the
True.
tool we use might not help us to be productive. Yeah.
Exactly.
The second use case is the main source of information. Now, this is one of the cultural rules that you have to establish within your organization. You need to streamline the tools used in your organization. So if you have multiple tools being used to share the same information, it's going to create a chaos, right? So what you have to do is, if you are using Jira could be the central place that everyone should refer to. I can assure that, because Jira is quite capable of doing that. And your focus should be to centralize every piece of information into Jira, so that if anyone wants to know something, if anyone wants to do something, they have to come to Jira. If the stakeholders want to learn about the one particular project done by one team, right? If the team wants to know what is happening in the leadership level, they all have to come to Jira and look forward to see the right details. So the trick is how well have you organized Jira for that purpose. So this is why I'm putting this as a use case. So when you do that, the need for multiple reports is drastically reduced. You can create boards, you can create dashboards, you can create filters to achieve that. The third use case is inspect and adapt to continuously improve. If you are going to use Jira extensively into your teamwork in your organization, this will definitely help you achieve that, right? So remember, it's all about the transparency you create, your ability to inspect the things and find out the root problems, then adapt. That will ensure that you are in the process of continuously improving. So you have to get that cycle right. You create the transparency, look at the things, discuss, brainstorm, review, inspect the things, and then come up with the strategies to adapt. One primary thing you have to ensure in order to achieve all these three use cases is making Jira is your central source of information. That is the main source of information. So if your team is using multiple things, right? I mean, there can be many tools being used. Some teams might use Trello, right? Example, HR mostly use something like that. But your development team uses Jira. Your leadership team use something else. Then it's not going to be aligned. Just because you have the right information in Jira, your leadership is not quite familiar with coming to Jira and checking that information. Got it? And your team is not able to go to the Trello that is maintained by HR. Sometimes they are not given access and know what's going on, what are the recruitments happening, what is the recruitment file. No, team will not know that. Then this is not achieved. In some of the scale-ups that I've worked and coached, one thing that I insisted doing that was a quite success in those implementations was that centralizing all the processes across the organization in Jira. This includes every department, not just delivery, right? So that is another problem that we face. Just the delivery team is on Jira. That doesn't help. I mean, that helps for the team, but it doesn't help organization. So there you have no way of rolling up to the leadership level of planning, strategic planning, and leadership does not have a way of nailing down to the team level of activities on given strategies. Example, if I have a strategy to be the best software provider for this particular domain, that is a strategy, right? Then for being part of a the leadership team, I should be able to start from that strategic goal, go deeper, and then understand what the team is working currently on that goal. So if you don't have that structure set up, you are not going to achieve that, right? Then your leadership team will start asking all the possible questions. They're going to confuse you. They're going to panic you with the most challenging questions. Then you are trying to produce all these reports and then send them. So it doesn't have to be the way.